I've spent a while trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to make this video out to be. Hypnospace Outlaw has been a game that I've been incredibly passionate about ever since I fired it up for the very first time. And the many hours that I spent digging into every corner of that world have really stuck with me. I think it's pretty fair to say that this game is somewhat of a hidden gem. It hasn't done really poorly for itself at all, but you're incredibly unlikely to hear it discussed amongst any of the other indie game greats of the last 5 years. YouTube coverage on this game as a whole has been relatively light aside from a review or two and like a handful of Let's Plays, which I guess is my inspiration for coming back and making a video again, so hopefully that's worth something in its own right. As a quick disclaimer, the first half of this video will be as spoiler-free as possible. If you're sensitive to things like knowing minor story beats or mechanics, then that's all you really have to worry about. I'll make a big fuss when we get to the second half of this video and into some real spoiler territory. I know a game like this doesn't seem like it would have spoilers of any kind, but trust me, if this game is something that you think you'll play and see through until the end, there's some stuff that I'd rather you see for yourself. Alrighty, so with that little introduction out of the way, let's talk about Hypnospace Outlaw, one of the most bizarre and beautiful games I've ever had the pleasure of experiencing. Hypnospace Outlaw was created by Jay Tholen and the rest of the fine folks at Tendershoot. They're a relatively new and very small team, though I doubt you'd guess that by the incredible quality on display with this project. The premise is simple enough. Its genre can sort of be described as a point-and-click adventure game, except your adventure takes place entirely in a fictional alternate reality 90s internet service. The catch though, in this world, the internet is something that you browse in your dreams. Created by the prestigious merchant soft, the internet, or Hypnospace, is accessible through this funky looking sweatband that you slip on before you fall asleep. Using the power of sleep time technology, the users in this bizarre recreation of 1999 are able to use the internet in their dreams. So the bulk of the Hypnospace Outlaw experience takes place across the many zones or geocities in the Hypnospace. These geocities are certain categories that the users of Hypnospace place their pages and blogs inside to talk about their passions and day-to-day lives with other people into similar hobbies and generally of their age group. It's kind of like a forum homepage type of thing, if you remember when forums were big, or they're kind of like their own subreddits, I guess. You've got zones based on age group like Teentopia and Good Time Valley. You can probably guess what ages fall in those. But then you've got other zones like Cool Punk Paradise and Starport Castle Dream Station that dive more into the niche hobbies and interests that these users have. However, you won't just be exploring the internet. Like I said, this is more of a point-and-click adventure game rather than just a simulation game. When you log into Hypnos? We'll call it Hypnos. You're tasked as a Hypnospace enforcer, a kind of volunteer forum moderator. You've got access to some neat hidden areas that other users don't, as well as the holy banhammer. You're assigned cases as your sort of main objective, but since most of the fun of Hypnospace is just exploring, you're also free to swing the banhammer at anyone else who's violating a Hypnospace rule. Whether it be copyright infringement, harassment, illegal currency, viruses, or disturbing content, you're free to ignore or strike what you see fit. Now, while Hypnospace Outlaw is basically on any gaming platform now, I experienced my first playthrough on PC, and wow, does that really feel like the place that this was meant to be played. While you'll be spending most of your time on the internet, you also have the entire rest of the computer, I guess you'd call it, to fiddle with. From weird little virtual pets, desktop backgrounds, stickers, a music player, and like actual viruses that will entirely screw up your whole Hypnospace. There was a remarkable amount of dedication put into HypnoOS to make you feel like you're actually on a virtual computer. While it's certainly doable, I just don't feel like playing this game on anything other than a mouse and keyboard will really capture the right feel that this game set out for. So I'll just settle for using my Switch copy as a mousepad or something, I don't know. Alright, with all that in mind, I think we're pretty well established on what Hypnospace Outlaw is on a certain level. So let's talk a little bit more about what makes it great to me. By far, the most impressive thing about this game is the absolutely convincing web that they've created. Nostalgia is always in fashion, and because of that, there's always some new media or product aiming to capitalize on it. Whether it be like an old school SNES-inspired RPG, like a new remake, or a really long overdue sequel, it's no secret that both the corporate and fan worlds have a fixation on making the old new again. But I've never in my life experienced something that aimed to capture a specific type of feeling, only accessible during a certain length of time, in such a genuine way that Hypnospace manages to capture. So the early internet was weird. It was ugly and cringy, and websites were horribly unoptimized. People hardly knew what to do with all this technology or how to behave online, though I guess that part never really changed. But I think what makes Hypnospace such a genuine recreation of this is while it may be satirical, it never feels like it's outwardly making fun of this weird, untamed, lawless era that used to be our online world. In fact, I'd say it's the opposite. Hypnospace Outlaw in every way is an homage to the creativity, the passion, and the uninhibited personalities of the internet from the late 90s and early 2000s. It harkens back to an era when people were fascinated by such new technology. They were excited to talk to strangers about their interests that they could never connect with otherwise, and they believed just about everything they read. This was the Wild West of the internet. Nobody was getting online to become an influencer or to catch fame. We weren't as skeptical of the online world scraping up every piece of data we had to offer. People were naive and passionate, confused but amazed. This raw enthusiasm poured onto every page as people were excited to interact with strangers across the world. And Tendershoot managed to take this awkward, prepubescent stage of the internet and write a love letter to it in the most heartfelt parody possible. This lack of cynicism is no more present than when exploring and meeting the dozens and dozens of memorable users across Hypnospace. Whether it be an edgy but passionate teenager, a misguided but protective community of old folks, or a stereotypical nice guy with a myriad of insecurities underneath. The world of Hypnospace feels like that, a genuine world full of fleshed out characters with backstories and personalities waiting to unfold. The level of interconnectivity and world building on display is honestly so admirable. Nothing feels out of place or meaningless. What you see on the surface level of someone's webpage may just be that, the very surface of their character. Exploration through their other pages may lead to discoveries about what's going on for them in the quote-unquote real world, underneath the quirky and exaggerated online personas that most people don on these forms of social media. Whether it be an illness, a recently deceased spouse, or strict religious parents, every one of these characters feel like they have some sort of history in this world and between each other through their fleeting interactions. This crucial feeling of humanity is what makes this game more than anything that has ever tried similarly. Plenty of other games in the past have shown characters interacting through forum posts or texts or made-up websites, but I can't really pick an example that comes even remotely close to the genuine feeling that this world has created. In a sense, these interactions almost feel like they're a sort of improv between many different actors, which is even more impressive when you see just how small Tendershoot's dev team is, because this cast of characters came from a team with like 2 writing credits. So I'll pull some more examples. Good Time Valley feels like one of those boomer-filled Facebook pages consisting of old cheesy jokes, awkward status updates, and lots of caps lock. Then Teentopia manages to also expertly capture seemingly every type of kid from the middle to high school ages, from the angsty Zane with his hand-drawn comments and butt rock-filled MySpace page, the nice guy Corey, the stereotypically goth and emo Tiffany, and so many others. What's interesting too is how many of these people don't directly serve the story or goals of the game. The great majority of people on Hypnospace are purely there for the player to discover off the beaten path without any sort of actual reason to be there. You'll find characters sharing their opinions on one another, discussing new hobbies and starting new projects for you to watch them progress through. And through their updating statuses and behaviors, you can even get a pretty solid understanding of how well their life's going on the outside, for better or worse. You know that feeling when you're playing an open world game and you catch a little pathway clearly going opposite of where you're meant to, but you get the feeling that if you give in and just follow it, there might be something cool on the other side? That's gonna be, without exaggeration, 75% of your Hypnospace Outlaw experience. And I say that in the absolute best way possible. The player is constantly being rewarded for their curiosity through more world building, more characters, more humor, music, and inconsequential side stories to discover. I can't even begin to fathom just how much planning and writing had to come together to make this world just absolutely feel so full of personality and life. At no point does it ever feel like you're just scratching the surface of this world. You're neck deep, and you could spend many hours poring over every piece of content that this game has to offer. If something catches your interest, like the mention of a band, a company, a character, anything like that, you're pretty much guaranteed to be able to discover everything you could ever want to know about it with just a little bit of digging, just like you could with the real internet. Not only do the characters grow and change from both the passage of in-game time, but also through your direct actions as an enforcer. What you might consider to be the breaking of a rule, they might consider to be infringing on their right to free speech. Maybe you take a few too many swings at an illegal commerce service, and eventually the users start to take measures to try and hide their rule breaking from you specifically. This really lends to the sense of reality where folks just aren't taking their strikes and continuing uninhibited. Sometimes they'll understand where they've gone wrong and agree, while others may become resentful of the enforcers ruining what they consider to be harmless fun. Every single event in their world impacts how they behave online, and it's really fascinating to see how this story is shaped by the player's actions, or in some cases, even the inactions. Another really cool detail of Hypnospace is the alternate reality aspect I mentioned before. You may be aware of this, but we do not actually have internet-capable brain laser head things. So we can only delve into that world through Hypnospace. Because this version of the internet takes place in dreams, there's a very heavy inspiration of the dreamcore aesthetic in both the web pages and overall feel of the visuals. Rather than the web pages loading in a somewhat uniform vertical matter like we're used to, instead text boxes and images will pop in out of order. There's like ripples and wiggles that will dot the screen as every item on the page starts to load in. It's a pretty small detail in the grand scheme, but it's an integral one at reminding us that our brain is the processor for this computer, so things are going to be a little bit more bizarre and random. For people who really enjoy the nostalgic melancholy of vaporwave and the surreal unease of dreamcore, like me, you'll find the aesthetic of Hypnospace Outlaw to scratch an itch that you never even knew existed. Okay, with all that in mind, I'd like to jump to the spoiler-filled side of this video. I think that if you're interested in this game at all, this next half may be better off saved until after you've beaten Hypnospace Outlaw. Only keep watching this if you don't care about spoilers, don't plan on playing the game, and you want to just keep hearing me talk. Or if you fell asleep like 10 minutes ago and this is still playing in the background, in which case we'll try to be like really quiet so we don't wake you up. Okay, was that long enough? Welcome to the second half, where we can talk about not only some of the big story beats that I particularly loved, but I also couldn't make this video without covering the absolutely incredible ending. I'd like to set the scene for the events that come because this story starts hitting hard and fast. While the first handful of cases are pretty harmless compared to the bigger picture, you're mostly spending your time policing copyrighted material, cyberbullying, illegal commerce, basically everything that cool dudes use the internet for. You begin working on the most investigation-heavy task yet. Turns out some of these verified cool dudes are using some really deep hidden software and multiple levels of encryption to hide some file sharing inside their Hypnospace accounts. Eventually, after some digging, you land on a page for DM Noise Pusher, and it's filled to the brim with illegally distributed music. So naturally, you start swinging your banhammer around like a mad lad, relishing in the joy of another job well done, when you get a surprise email. The subject is a ha 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 ha, you're hilarious. Turns out you've been striking the head honcho himself, Dylan Merchant, and now it's logged everywhere for the whole team to see that Dylan Merchant has been using his own service to illegally distribute copyrighted material. He basically just absolutely trashes on you and fires you from being an enforcer anymore. The way that this little twist here affected me is just a real testament to how immersed I was feeling in this world and just how much of the eerie aesthetic being built in these back pages had set the stage for this turn of events. From the sheer confusion of being interrupted with my work to the absolutely patronizing and egotistical and threatening text in Dylan's email, it gave me a real sense of unease unlike most horror games can actually achieve. And to seal the deal, moments after receiving the email, you are ejected from Hypnospace. Alright, without spending too much time on the next summary, your old taskmaster Samantha brings you back to enforcer status a month later on December 31st, 1999. Commenting that she didn't even notice you were ejected and it must have been some sort of silly glitch in the system, something funky like that. The Hypnospace headset installs a year 2000 update and everything starts to get really bizarre and glitchy. Audio errors and visual artifacts start rapidly interfering with your enforcing. Despite this, you're assigned a new task to check up on our old pal Tim, a regular rule breaker and virus aficionado who's threatening to use his epic hacker powers to bring about the Y2K mind crash on all of Hypnospace, whatever that means. The entirety of Teentopia is covered in Tim's usual grotesque fare, and some further digging brings about a message from Tim to a fellow Teentopia user that I mentioned before, Tiffany. This whole mind crash business was just a hoax to get her attention so he could apologize to her for his overbearing personality, pushing her away, and maybe a little contradictory considering the whole fake virus thing, but do your thing, I guess, Tim. He even places a button inside the message to turn off all the scary mind crash effects. So shortly after saving the day and ending the mind crash, HypnoOS automatically updates one more time and downloads a new update known as Outlaw, something Dylan Merchant himself had mentioned as part of his pet project once or twice. This is when hell really breaks loose, as the installer notably begins to frantically drop up and down, and chunks of the screen begin to vanish and explode, and eventually it just stops, flashing an error, and for the first time, we wake up in the real world. A brief transition and a newscast airs before your eyes, talking about the year 2000 mind crash virus, an event responsible by none other than Tim himself, entirely destroying Hypnospace and even killing multiple users in their sleep in the process.
California teen hacker responsible for the year 2000 mind crash virus that left at least 5 Hypnospace users dead has become the first juvenile charged in federal court with manslaughter by way of computer hacking. Tim Randall Stevens, who went by the handle Timogeddon in Hypnospace, will serve up to 6 years in federal prison for the crime.
Now 20 years pass, and you finally log into your headset once more and join up with a crew of fellow past enforcers to try and archive the entirety of Hypnospace. So while that it may be dead, it's not forgotten. With the power to access any date that you previously logged onto Hypnospace, you can now jump through time and view any area of the internet before or after certain events. While it was fun to go back and revisit my favorite pages, along with the ability to move forward and back in time to see how they were in the beginning and what they evolved to be, it was impossible to shake the feeling of this melancholic loneliness. No longer was Hypnospace a living, breathing world filled with passionate people talking about their lives and their interests. It was a literal ghost town without a single update in 20 years. Not to mention the thought of a handful of these users being deceased hanging over your mind as you explore. The tasks in this section are similar to before, basically just spending time exploring the ruins of Hypnospace and trying to find specific hidden sections or media for the archival team. That's not the end of the story developments though, as you receive a message from your fellow archivist who is secretly Samantha, who, as I previously mentioned, was your old taskmaster during the glory days of this online dreamscape. After doing her own digging, she believes that the final update Dylan rolled out without the rest of the team's approval was filled with faults, leading to the Y2K mind crash, the subsequent deaths, and Tim unfairly taking the fall and spending the rest of his teenage years in prison. She tasks you with helping her find proof within Hypnospace that Dylan Merchant knew that the update wasn't ready, and was aware that Merchantsoft knew that Hypnospace was not only dangerous for users due to the strange technology it utilized, but that any fault similar to that found within the Outlaw update would be catastrophic to users' health. After plugging away searching blindly in the vast world of Hypnospace for any clues, another email rolls in. Dylan Merchant himself has joined the archival team. Now I can't quite tell you how exactly the game managed to grab me this hard, but that email was genuinely unnerving. Knowing exactly what Dylan had done, along with how he speaks to you after finding his illegal stash, and now he's back 20 years later, while we as the player are actively trying to find evidence that would send him to prison. Who knew that Hypnospace Outlaw would be the biggest horror game I've ever played? Because despite something being this seemingly fun and funky internet simulator, I felt genuine terror from that man. As it would turn out, the investigation uncovers the truth behind it all. Not only were the users not actually sleeping during the Hypnospace usage, which led to sleep deprivation, but Merchantsoft was actively silencing claims regarding any potential brain damage caused by the Hypnospace headband. After sending the evidence to Sam, another email from Dylan comes in. He makes an uncomfortable comment disguised somewhat playfully that he noticed you're sending in content using the Enforcer banhammer, however, he can't tell exactly what it is. Basically confirmation that he's onto us. Further digging into his profile uncovers the motherlode. Dylan actively knew that the update wasn't finished, was aware of the possible health problems involved with Hypnospace and ignored them, and was completely aware of the risk taken when uploading his unfinished update. Samantha ecstatically praises you for uncovering the entire mystery, and the proof that Dylan single-handedly caused the mind crash event. No less than a minute later, another email comes in from Dylan Merchant to the entire team, titled, "Hello, Samantha." The letter begins in the same ominous tone. Dylan is fully aware of what we're up to, and he has guessed what exactly we were trying to prove. Unexpectedly, he admits to the Y2K mine crash and attaches a formal confession in his email. Pretty soon you'll figure out, like I did, that HAP Chelsea is actually MS Samantha, a former employee of MerchantSoft. Working with the player, she is attempting to compile evidence that proves that MerchantSoft is guilty of several crimes, one of which is knowledge of the inherent dangers associated with sleep time computing. Whether she found and submitted these files or not, the truth of this allegation is simple. I am responsible for the Y2K mine crash. Attached, you'll find a link to a confession of sorts. He signs off with, "Sorry if this letter sounds a bit formal. I've been wanting to write one like it for a while. Dreading it, actually. However, I'm not scared anymore. It's been eating at me for over 20 years, and I just need peace. I'm not expecting forgiveness from any of you. I know several incredible people that I previously did not. I finally experienced Hypnospace and the beauty its citizens brought into the world for myself. I am so sorry to you, Tim, more than almost anyone. Send this to whoever you need or want to. I'll be waiting. Dylan." His confession comes in the form of a game, specifically Outlaw, one of the final updates that itself caused the mine crash. Lucky for us, it does not fry our headset and instead is now fully functional. The game is simple and lined with old Hypnospace references. Using your little enforcer car, you lasso the outlaw cars one by one and capture them. However, every time you catch one, a message pops up at the top. Each car represents an old Hypnospace citizen, a user who did not survive the mine crash. You catch one final car, representing Dylan Merchant himself, and the credits roll. All you're left with is the silence of your own desktop screen, and a file for each of the cars you captured. A eulogy for every person who lost their life due to Dylan Merchant. Tiffany, I took your future away from you. Your little worlds delighted others. Mine destroyed them. I'm sorry. You could have been someone your mother was proud of. I'm sorry, Zane. And the one that I feel explains Dylan Merchant's character and revelations the best. Roddy, you might not buy this, but I considered you my best friend at the end there. My work consumed me and became me. People who weren't helping me build my masterpiece were invisible. Through it all, you were always willing to come back and put up with my garbage. And God, I wish you hadn't. I'm sorry. I won't read all of them as there's a handful, but this conclusion is so deeply haunting and honestly entirely unexpected. The story of this game has been really subversive so far in its depth and twists, but honestly Dylan's confession still managed to catch me by surprise. We spent the entire last act thinking that he was joining the archival team to put a stop to us. His initial emails that seemed passive-aggressive, in hindsight, tend to feel more awkward and nervous. All of his malicious behavior that took place before the 2000 incident vanished as he was immediately forced to be humbled by the catastrophic mistake that he had made. Finally, after all of that, there is no conclusion. You don't get to hear what happened to Dylan Merchant. We don't know what happened to those who survived or where the families of those who died are. We're just left with the void of Hypnospace. You can continue your journey in finding every single page for the sake of archival, but the melancholic feeling that hung over Hypnospace grows to even more of a feeling of loneliness as it becomes ever more apparent that you are truly the last user there. In a world that meant so much to so many, and now nothing more than a relic at best, and a graveyard at worst. Whoa, that got a little serious. What's something else? I liked Professor Helper, and the butt virus was kind of funny. Oh wait, I know.
Granny Cream's hot butter ice cream. We take the hot butter, mix it with the ice cream, freeze it up cool, you can see it on your screen. Put it in your
Hey, if you made it this far, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. If you liked what you saw, feel free to hit that like button and subscribe. If you didn't, hit the dislike button and let me know down in the comments what I can do better for next time. Thanks for watching.
Hey everyone, I'm St. Buddy here. While I was working on this video, Jay Thorne announced the sequel to Hypnospace Outlaw, DreamSettler. Not only is it more Hypnospace Outlaw goodness, it takes place right in the middle of the Windows XP era. I hope this video sold you on Hypnospace Outlaw if you haven't played it yet, and if you have, I hope you're as excited as I am for DreamSettler. And remember, the internet is right behind your eye sockets. nestled inside of your brain. Don't think about it, 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 don't